sanctuaries: Olympic Coast, Cordell, Greater Farallones, Monterey Bay, and Channel Islands, and use a species ID guide. So kind of doing what we're doing here in terms of looking at an ID guide and saying that's a rockfish, that's a sponge. Teachers can use that opportunity to engage their students in doing what we're doing right here. So that's a really great resource for teachers: Deep Sea Coral Curriculum, National Marine Sanctuaries.
Yes, I just think there's so many connections you can make to marine science, to the work that ED Nautilus does, and many of their science communication fellows and their education team have done the hard work for you as well. So there's curriculum resources also on the nautiluslive.org website. You can click on education and see how you can bring deep ocean expeditions into your classroom, and through the lens of science, technology, engineering, arts and humanities, math, and even just talking about career pathways to your students.
I got some input from one of our scientists ashore, Tom Leidig, who tells us that the egg cases we've been seeing are cat shark egg cases, not skate egg cases.
Good to know. Our viewer was right then.
They seem very big for a cat shark.
So many catfish egg cases. That's very exciting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of ratfish, like that guy. It would be very big for a ratfish.
Yeah.
Say cat shark eggs.
Laura from Virginia is curious about how do we determine what specimens to sample?
We coordinate before the cruise with some of our collaborators and scientists who help us to identify these organisms, and we look at what we've collected previously, what we still have questions about, and what we need to collect to be able to identify those organisms. So do we need to collect just a piece or a whole organism, and what are our priorities? So we think carefully about what we want to collect, because we just don't want to collect indiscriminately. We are in national marine sanctuaries. We do have to get a permit to collect these organisms. And then we create a list that we have been working off of for this whole cruise, and trying to, throughout all the watches and all the dives, try to collect specimens of those organisms.
And then Taylor Ann, being our ocean science intern and data logger, what do we do with the organisms that we collect?
So we bring them into our wet lab to process them and label them so that we know where they came from, how much we collected, and then we send them off to other labs for them to be further studied and identified. And there's various different types of research going on. So we have coral samples, sponge samples, sediment samples, water samples, as well as associates and other organisms that come along when we collect certain species. And so my job is to take all the species or things that we collect off of the vessel and to place them into a fridge to keep them at a constant temperature. And while I do that, we take photos of each specimen with a ruler for measurement and the ID that goes along with them, and then we place them into tubes or bags with ethanol, or freeze some of the samples depending on what type of sample it is, and label them properly and send them off to wherever their destination is to be studied. It's pretty cool. I love getting to actually see these physical samples in person and looking at their features. They're really different in person than they look sometimes in the sea.
And just to hold some of these specimens, I mean, can you describe what you know, a sponge feels like, or
Yeah.
what the corals are like?
We just passed the 10-minute mark, but I think we'll just keep going to that 1ABE since we're nearly there and headed in that direction, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me. Works for me.
So it depends on the sponge type. Like some sponges are glass sponges, like so they have spicules and they're pretty rough, and you wouldn't want to squeeze them; it would hurt. And then some sponges are a little bit softer to the touch, but still a little rough. The corals, they have really hard skeletons, depending on what type of coral it is. And then they have softer polyps on the outside. And then there are some soft corals too, but I have gloves on every time when I do touch these specimens. I don't really try to touch them too much. I don't want to disturb their natural state, so I handle them pretty delicately and lightly as I put them into their proper containers so that the scientists can study them pretty much the same way as we found them.
Thanks for describing that.
So
Yeah, that
Those look like
cat
cat shark egg bundles there. Yeah.
there's a lot of them.
Oh
That's
my
a lot of them,
gosh,
yeah.
Plentiful.
Miles, you mentioned ratfish eggs, sorry. And Tom Leidig, our scientist ashore, tells us that ratfish egg cases look like teardrops.
Yeah, I was conflating the two, thinking that those egg cases came out of ratfish.
Right.
I'm very wrong.
I've never seen ratfish egg cases. We'll have to keep our eyes out.
So
That
on
looks like a cow cod.
on the quad view on the web stream on sat feed 2, we have our sunrise, which should occur in the next few minutes. And that's a view from our vessel.
I took a quick break earlier and saw about 20 black-footed albatrosses between here and the sunrise and 2 whale blows. I was like, okay, it can't get better than this.
Nice.
We're in a productive area.
Yeah.
Again, yesterday it was really fun to see. I was not in the control room, but I was watching the live feed on one of the monitors and saw, you know, all this krill in the live feed, and then to come on deck and see so many creatures, from whales to seabirds feeding on the krill, and just to remind ourselves of the surface and lower water column connections.
Yeah.
Taylor Ann's screen went black.
On the back row?
Yeah. Anybody able to help with
Yes,
that?
stand by. I'll be right there.
Thanks, Wayne. Can change that if you want.
This is fun. Now I get to do some data logging. I should have practiced earlier.
We're seeing some krill in front of the camera.
All right, we're approaching the end of this transect. I will call out the end when we get over the point. So I'm at side 2. Yeah. Do you want to take over and? Oh, okay.
No, we're just trying to get the computer she was using back up. We're trying to figure out which one it was.
Okay. We're having a little monitor troubleshooting back here, so.
There's the point.
I still have access to it. Okay.
You're just viewing it right now.
Oh, really?
There you go.
I haven't. Oh.
We,
Okay. We just passed it, huh? Okay.
We did.
I put a. $14.06.36.
Okay, I'm back. Troubleshooting complete. I'll say.
Okay, I'll let Taylor Ann take over with the data logging again. Apologies in advance for anything I did sloppily or wrong in the data logging. It was
No problem. Sure, you're fine.
okay. All right, so we ended that transect, and looks like we're supposed to hang a left here.
left has been hung.
Okay, and head towards 1 ACS.
I'll say good morning to my friend Mia, who is watching in Reno.
Aww.
Thanks for joining us.
And for new viewers, we always have questions about the lasers. So the lasers are constant 10 centimeters apart and help scientists to get a sense of scale.
Yeah, guess what? I got an answer on our hanging rockfish situation last night.
Ooh.
Really?
Yes, I'm so happy. Tom Leidig is on our side chat, shipped scientist ashore, and I asked him, why do they hang upside down, nose to tail, just kind of free falling? And he says they hang in the water column to rest and sleep. Some go to the seafloor to rest. Others may be startled by the lights and sound and faint. Faint. We had fainting rockfish, or act unnatural. Sometimes they are dropping out of the way of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's interesting. Thank you, Tom. He's also commenting how we're having quite an abundance of rockfish and a great
Yes.
diversity. So I think that is a good sign of a healthy habitat.
Yeah, if you're a rockfish fan, this dies for you. Even though it is Octopus Day,
Yes.
that I was going to say that was one of my highlights as well, the pancake octopus
Mm-hmm.
in our transit.
We really appreciate our scientists ashore chiming in. We haven't talked about that too much on our shift, at least. There's some more cat shard eggs. Wow, there's quite a lot here. Let's get some zooms, some close-ups.
Zoom, zoom.
We can only bring so many people on the vessel, so it's great to be able to connect to scientists who aren't on the vessel via telepresence and can lend their expertise and help us talk about what we're seeing.
Certainly. And this, telepresence capacity is really what makes EV Nautilus so dynamic and fairly unique, that scientists, but also the general public can live stream and can, comment and offer their questions or their expertise to our expedition. So we have a satellite on board the EV Nautilus, and that helps us to transmit all of our footage and data in real time.
Nailed it.
Really appreciate Tom Leidig from National Marine Fisheries Service helping us out as a scientist ashore, as he is on his way or already on his own expedition where he'll be doing telepresence on a NOAA ship, the Reuben Lasker. So thanks, Tom.
So neat.
Some information from Tom about the cat shark eggs. He said they can take up to a year to hatch, and that's why you see such a wide color range. The bright yellow was just recently laid.
Yeah, I was noticing on that clutch to the left, there's and other parts of the reef, there's like bright yellow coloration of the actual rock.
There's an example there, 2 different color.
Yeah. So does that mean that one cat shark or more than one cat shark will come back and lay eggs over in the same place over time? Is that why we see?
I was wondering the same thing. It looks like that one egg case there might be open. The upper left.
Up at the top.
Split open on the bottom seam.
Oh yeah.
So somewhere there's
It's got a shrimp on top.
baby shark. Doo 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 doo.
No.
I'm not gonna do it.
Too late. Earworm planted.
And I know in general, a lot of egg masses provide tons of nutrients to other animals. Have we noticed any animals eating these cat shark eggs?
Oh, nicely queued up.
I was just going to clarify with Tom about that.
Tom tells us that the sea star that we were seeing on the eggs is a fish-eating star, and it eats the poor little eggs before they hatch.
Wow.
I wonder if it pierces the egg case.
Yeah, someone tuning in was asking about that sea star specifically, so good catch.
You're about to get tugged.
Okay.
All right.
Coming wide.
All right. There's even another bundle on the rock behind there.
Yeah.
This has been a really interesting dive.
I just saw another pluribranch. One of the sea slugs that we zoomed in on earlier. We passed it by.
I love that guy. And right now you're really seeing Hercules fly. Hercules is just one of our 2 ROVs, and Hercules and the other ROV Argus are tethered together and tethered to the EV Nautilus. And Herc's pretty amazing with 7 cameras and 6 thrusters and 2 manipulator arms, many collection devices for sediment and water. Herc's able to capture amazing high definition footage as well as sample so much from the system. So I'm always amazed at what Herc can do.
I was saying earlier that they should make a Lego set of the EV Nautilus and Hercules
Oh
and
my gosh.
Argus. I think that would be a pretty cool special edition of Legos.
That is such a good idea. I
There is
know.
one for Falcor and Sebastian, so I'm sure we could get one for Nautilus, Herc, and
cool.
Argus.
My nieces and nephews would love that.
One of the Falcor crew is a Lego fan, so they had a custom one built.
Antonella, can you tell us a little bit more about your story and your research currently in your PhD program?
Yeah, so I work primarily on vision-based underwater mapping of ocean environments for autonomous robots, but it also involves building a lot of custom vehicles and platforms, much smaller than Herc, much less advanced, that don't require a large research vessel to deploy. Working mostly in like shallow water coastal environments for mapping things like coral reefs or subaquatic vegetation.
Could we slow down just a touch unless you're trying to get out ahead?
I was, yeah, but I'm where I want to be now.
Okay, thanks.
Going to match the vessel heading. And off we go.
Okay.
That was payback for the egg sack video.
I know that there's a lot more opportunities for ROVs to go into the classroom, so I'm currently applying for a grant to get a Trident ROV at Hudson River Park in New York City where I work. Are the ROVs that you're working on, would they be, yes, smaller, but more, I guess, reach or accessible to a variety of audiences and users, like classrooms?
Is that for me? Yeah, they're much more accessible. The cost is always a really huge factor in the accessibility of underwater equipment. The Trident's cool because it's smaller, much lower cost, but it isn't as feature rich as a lot of larger and more expensive ROVs, so there's definitely a trade-off there. I have used a lot of the Blue ROV2 from a company called Blue Robotics, and I've done a lot of customizations to that platform, and have a couple that I'm building which are have various features, but kind of have more computational power and more sensors.
Everybody run.
You saw Boccaccio? It's a lot of Boccaccio.
What's that?
How many thrusters do your blue ROVs have on them?
Mine has 8. The stock vehicle is 6, so you can control 5 degrees of freedom. With 8, you can control all 6, so pitch, roll, yaw, and then lateral in all directions, or yeah, all directions. So that's really useful because we're working in like very shallow environments. So like this is a shallow dive for us. We're at 188 meters at the moment. But when I say shallow water, I mean like the top 20 meters. So a lot of like, sometimes deeper than 20 meters, but we get a lot of effects of working so close to the surface, like dealing with swell and wave energy, which like causes the vehicle to move. And there's a lot of complex bathymetry in environments like coral reefs where you have like a lot of 3D relief and structure. So you have to be able to control the vehicle's position really, really accurately in all dimensions. Otherwise you can crash into corals, which is very, very bad. So yes, there's a lot of sort of some controls involved, but my work is more on the mapping and vision side. But yeah, the vehicles, I mean, so the base cost of the vehicle is like $5,000-ish. So it's like accessible as far as underwater technology goes. But it's certainly not like, the barrier to getting that into a classroom is definitely a little higher than the Trident. But you also get a lot more configurability. It's a good platform for teaching like programming and computer science and also some mechanical design. And electronics, so.
So cool. Thank you
Yeah.
for shining some more light on that.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that egg mass has a borehole in it at the left bottom, which I know
This
some
stripe
gastropods. At the
eggs at the top.
kind of more towards the left side, but there's a perfect
yeah.
hole, which to me looks like some type of snail drilled into it.
Yeah. There was also one at the top of this rock. The group right there together, right above the lasers, they have stripes on them. I thought I noticed it. Oh no, it was the shadow of the
Crinoid.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's definitely not stripes.
But thanks for sharing, Antonella. I've seen firsthand so many students light up when they get that controller in their hand to an ROV and they figure it out how to, move it or do something with it. And that hands-on opportunity just really seems to engage a whole, different audience maybe then, and it kind of expand who marine science is interesting to. So it's just really nice to hear about this technology and just learn more about what you're studying.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a summer camp run up in Maine by an ROV pilot that he takes you out on a boat, and they have a small ROV that everybody gets to drive and work on and sort of learn the technology.
Nice.
It's called Oceans Wide.
Oceans Wide.
Cool.
Oh,
That's
wow.
awesome. I've never heard of that. Is there a particular age range?
I think high school.
Like high school?
And who doesn't want to be in Maine in the summer?
Yeah.
So he was trying to talk me into taking that class, so I don't think it's really age limited.
Oh, okay. This is coming from Miles, who's been on 30-something EV Nautilus expeditions.
Miles, I think that was a trick to get you to help teach it.
Yeah.
Maybe. He was trying to get me to become a pilot.
Well, since we're talking about educational opportunities for robotics, there's the MATE program in Monterey, which has a competition annually for students who create their own ROVs, and they create a mission that everybody builds to. And it's a really amazing program to teach science, technology, engineering, and math.
Ooh, is that a juvenile yellow eye rockfish on the bottom left of the screen?
Swimming one?
Yeah, a striped.
Ooh.
Yeah.
he looks different than the rest of them.
Yep, juvenile yellow eye. I don't think we've seen any adult yellow eye, but we're always on the lookout for the juveniles. We have a lot of those on Cordell Bank.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thanks. We got him. Could tell he was getting far away. Okay.
Well, that it is.
All right, so we have half hour left.
Struggling there.
Let's say we end this with a octopus for Octopus Day.
This dive was designed, the transects were designed to cover a range of habitat types, and looks like, looking at the habitat map, we are moving out of some rocky area and into possibly some soft, flat
Sorry,
habitat.
this is the slope map. There's habitat.
Okay, so maybe mixed or soft.
On the quad view, we do have a image right now of the control room. And our viewers were just curious. We have so many more screens in front of us. What are some of these screens that we're looking at?
Okay. Yeah, there's, I think we counted 47 screens at some point on board. The primary screens are the center the view of the pilot right now, and the two major screens in the center are the ones that the pilots use.
We just came into a whole bunch of krill.
They use those to gain perspective of how the vehicles are oriented, how they're flying, what's in front of them, and which direction we need to go, how close we are to the bottom, how close the vehicles are to each other. Lots of different information is provided on those screens. We can reroute any of the cameras to those screens, and we do. Like, for instance, if they're operating the manipulator arm and they have a sample that they're dropping into the port or the starboard collection box, we will often change that view to be the starboard collection box, so that they can more accurately control the arm and place the sample in without damaging the sample or the arm, the box. So, and above that we have 3 screens. The screen to the left, you will see the, it's currently showing the status of the 6/8 cable, which is the main steel cable that is attached to Argus. So that's, we can see as we pay out cable, if it's paying out properly with the right tension, and if it's retrieving properly with the right tension, with the cameras mounted on those, the spool and the tensioner that are below deck at the moment on board. The center above monitor has 13 different screens, We can set any of the cameras on the vehicles to any of those 13 windows. And there's a screen to the right, on the upper right, that's our sonar. So the sonar is going to give information to the navigator and the pilot how close the vehicles are to hard surfaces. So if it's murky water and we really can't see, or our visibility's not clear, we can use the sonar to judge our distance to the seafloor or to the nearest hard surfaces. All the screens along the bottom those are computer screens. They have different functions. They're in pairs. The two on the left are the two computer screens for the co-pilot. The two in the center, or actually the three in the center, are for the pilot, the Hercules pilot, and then there's two on the right for the navigator. And then if we move our view over to where we are,
Hi, everyone.
that's me, the lead video engineer, and I'm the one that has these monitors. These monitors, I can put whatever cameras I want on it. I typically leave the Argus or the Hercules Argus camera, which is the main camera, on this screen. That's way I can better control the brightness, the zoom, and the focus, and the iris. So, and that's primarily my concern during the majority of the dive. And then over here, these are the controls and the screens that help me select and route the different video to the different screens for the different scientists and pilots in the van.
Nice.
So
Thanks, Wayne.
lots of screens, lots of things going on.
Cool. And on the main screen and feed, we are seeing tons of krill, which we also saw a lot of yesterday. And for new people just tuning in, can we just do a quick walkthrough of what some of the dominant species are that we're seeing in the camera?
Sure, we're seeing a lot of sea stars, or rathbanaster. We're seeing the white fluffy anemones, or the metridium. Seeing some sea cucumbers, a lot of rockfish. We've been seeing green spotted, green striped, sharp chinned, chili pepper, boccaccio. We even saw a cowcod. We saw a juvenile yellow eye rockfish just a few moments ago. We've been seeing cat shark egg cases in bundles on the rocks. We've been seeing a lot of brachiopods, those shellfish-shaped shells on the rock are kind of clam-shaped. Those are brachiopods. We made a collection of those earlier. Been seeing cup corals. Hagfish, the eel-like fish that you see on the bottom of the screen there. Flatfish. We've been seeing the slender sole, I think.
Skates.
Skates. Dover and slender sole. Saw some spot prawn earlier. And now we're seeing a lot of krill.
Okay, let's,
So krill are a small crustacean that are a good food source for a lot of animals in this area, including whales, humpback and blue whales, and even seabirds. Cass and Zocklet specialize on krill. That's a seabird. Other seabirds will eat them as well. And they do a diurnal migration, so during the day they come to the bottom of the ocean, and at night they'll travel to the top and feed on phytoplankton there.
I always find it so interesting to think about these changes in the ocean over different timeline scales or different temporal scales. So that's a really great example of a change that just happens throughout the day, similar to our tides. In New York City, where I'm from, we have 2 high tides and 2 low tides a day. But you can think about changes in our ocean over so many different time horizons and consider very different types of phenomenon or behaviors even of wildlife. Are there any other examples that you often discuss in the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary?
About things that change with time?
Yeah, things that change over time.
Well, we talk a lot about the migration of animals. So a lot of animals come to Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuary and Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary to feed at different times of the year. So a lot of times in the summer we get the whales that arrive from Mexico or Central America. From spring through fall. The gray whales migrate through during the winter to the spring. And the seabirds come in the summer to the fall. So yeah, things definitely change throughout the year in the sanctuaries. Jenny might have some good examples.
I was thinking it all somewhat revolves around food and food availability, and with the spring upwelling, we get just a cascading effect, trophic effect of all the food, and we'll get salmon in the wintertime. We'll have Dungeness crab season.
Oh, that's another seasonality, different fishing seasons.
Yeah, the fishing seasons. Also, we tend to have a little bit calmer, warmer water in the fall, just because upwelling has subsided a bit, and we usually have more gelatinous stuff in the water then, and we tend to have the opportunity to see leatherback turtles that time of year, simply because the weather has settled down. They're highly endangered in the Pacific, but every once in a while
I would love to see one.
See them. But
they're the largest species of turtle, correct?
Yeah, and they cross over from Indonesia.
Wow.
To feed on this coast.
Wow.
Because there's so many jellies here.
It's really amazing. Can we pan left to some rocks over there? Just to see if there's anything interesting around.
The wintertime on the beaches, we have to have a bit more scouring just because of usually higher energy waves and storms that scour sand away, and so the beaches tend to be a little shorter in the winter. And northern fulmars are a type of seabird that feed up in the Arctic in the summer, and then they come down to this area in the winter.
Can you zoom to the right of that cucumber that the lasers are by? There's something sticking up that could be, I don't know, that might be worm tubes. I was thinking maybe it was a sea pen or something, but probably a worm tube. Okay, can zoom out.
All right, coming wide.
Okay, we can keep going.
What was I talking about? I'm tired.
19 minutes.
Forgot what I
Hang
was
in there.
just talking about.
actually just 9 minutes till the next shift starts to come in. So.
Okay.
Well, it's just so amazing to me to think about, you know, these animals come from so far away across the Pacific, and they expend so much energy to get here. And it's just amazing that the food source here is so rich that it's worth it for them to expend that energy to come here.
That's
go
right.
back.
I was talking about northern fulmars.
Oh, right.
And so they breed and feed up in the Arctic, and they come down here in the winter. But the problem is the winter, there's not a lot of nutrients around because shorter days, less sunlight, less phytoplankton. So the Beach Watch program that we were talking about earlier, that citizen science program that Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary has been running for 25 years, you know, it's really neat because the stuff that they see alive and dead are really indicative of the cycles of the seasons and the sanctuaries. And they tend to see more dead northern fulmars in the winter because there's less food around and they happen to be here that time of year. One cycle that we'll be paying attention to this winter is warm water. There's this warm water mass that's moved up into the Pacific that hasn't been really well scientifically described as of yet, so it's been called the blob. And it's a warm water mass, and the things that happen when we have warm water tend to happen where biomass reduces and we get a lot of hungry sea lions. It's increased potential for harmful algal blooms. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah. I hadn't heard of the blob.
The blob we had a few years ago was given that nickname by a scientist, and
Kind of stuck.
it kind of stuck. More scientifically, we call it the warm water anomaly.
Ah, that's it.
Dylan from Rhode Island was curious if we ever encounter something, an animal or a feature that we're concerned could damage herc.
Oh, fishing gear, fishing line.
Yep, that's the biggest concern.
Yeah.
I didn't know that answer.
Actually, herc pilots are typically the biggest concern.
Take care of the pilots.
Well, when we see fishing line on the seafloor, you know, you don't know if you're just seeing a little piece or if there's more of it. Some of it can be hanging in the water column, and you could maybe go under it, and I've seen that happen before, get it wrapped in the tether. So that's a huge concern to pilots. I've seen ROV pilots react very, very quickly before anyone else has ever seen it if they see something that looks like a line.
Okay.
Wow, look at all this krill.
Oh my gosh.
It's a krill rave.
This is insane.
They're saying it's Cephalopod Awareness Day. Let's boogie. And speaking
wait,
of
wait,
which,
there's an
there's
octopus.
an octopus.
There's an
Woo,
octopus.
woo,
Go
woo.
back, go back, go back.
Don't have much time.
No.
International
if it-
Octopus Day. We must salute our octopuses.
Yes. Okay.
Aw.
it's like a little shy.
Yeah.
Not really sure about this.
Wow. It's going to be hard to see with all those
No.
squirrels.
Sea star.
Wow.
We can do it.
It's a sea star.
Oh.
Wow.
Wasn't meant to be. Well, I asked for one. I got it. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Drops mic.
Seriously.
Leaves Zan.
Miss Cassidy's class from Texas is tuning in, and her students are really curious about rockfish and any interesting behaviors. I know we mentioned some, but likely it was before they joined us. So can you just describe rockfish in a little more detail?
Well, there's many different species that we have here, and they all tend to have that big, robust body shape, really full in the front with lots of tail. They do have a sharp spines in their dorsal fin, big eyes. They have a swim bladder, which means they can regulate where they are in the water column by regulating their swim bladder. Oftentimes when rockfish are caught from these depths, or even shallower depths than this, and are brought to the surface, they experience something called barotrauma, where their air bladder, which has been sitting at pressure, all of a sudden is not experiencing pressure and kind of blows up like a balloon. And that's not good for rockfish that you need to put back because they're not the right species or they're not the right size. There's been some experiments with how to help relieve that barotrauma, to return that rockfish safely. But those big eyes are for seeing underwater. They eat other fish primarily, although some rockfish eat gelatinous stuff like jellies and ctenophores that we were seeing a couple days ago. I think some rockfish eat krill, maybe when they're smaller. The big thing about rockfish is they like to be near rocks, at least at some point in their life. And we've been seeing that a lot today, where they hang out around ledges or in between habitat of sponges. So they're a really neat species. There's some really great books about rockfish. Milton Love is the author of a great book about rockfish. Great information about them.
The krill that we're seeing are these small crustaceans called euphausids, kind of related to shrimp. And oh my gosh.
Whoa!
We typically have two species here, the Euphausia pacifica and the genus name starts with a T, Phanosa spinifera. I remember the species name. Hard to tell from here which one is which, but when you have them holding in your hand or even under a microscope, you can look at the structure on their carapace and the spines and tell them apart.
Very neat.
I think some krill get trapped onto the continental shelf. Like Danny was saying earlier, they have this diurnal migration where they go down to deep slopes and canyons during the day to somewhat hide out. And then if you look at that body shape, just a couple centimeters, they swim all the way up to the surface.
Darting rockfish, wow.
To feed on phytoplankton at night. And sometimes when they're moving and there might be a current, they can get pushed onto the continental shelf or pushed above habitat like a bank, and they become very vulnerable to...
Let's see if there's anything going on these rocks.
Baleen whales coming to take advantage of them, like blue whales and humpback whales and fin whales. Those are our common baleen whales here, minke whales that will lunge feed or gulp and just strain out that krill.
There's a big worm too.
There's your little striped
Oh,
guy.
and there's a juvenile yellow eye rockfish.
Oh, yeah.
Zoom in on him, Wayne.
We're starting to see a little algae. Are we in the photic area?
Where are we? We're 178
178?
meters. It's pretty deep.
So Herc's high-def cameras are helping us to zoom in with the help of our video engineer, Wayne.
Oh, that worm's coming out.
Beautiful. And Herc was first launched in 2003. Miles, do you have any sense of how many expeditions Herc has gone on?
No, there was a time before Nautilus that is not well logged.
That was
But
fast.
since being sort of mated with Nautilus, we've This is the 793rd dive.
Wow. Herc has seen some things, been around the block,
There's
as we say.
a spotted fish about the same size off to the right. Right under the big fish.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I think we saw one of those earlier.
Mm-hmm. Saw one early in the dive.
Yeah. And
If you hold that zoom for a minute, Wayne,
Okay.
I'll come around and sit down so I can get a profile.
okay.
I was thinking maybe it was sword spine.
I'm gonna have to get going here soon.
Yeah.
Get the tug.
I think we got him. Yeah. It's, ooh,
Oh, that
Rose thorn. Mm.
was most unelegant.
it's okay.
Sorry, we're getting the tug.
Mhm.
Time to
Alright.
go.
Time to go. All right. Full
Gentle
wide.
reminder that we're tethered to Argus.
People are curious again if the krill can muck up or interfere in any way with our ROVs.
Yes.
It makes them smell nice.
I've had it. We've gotten into a cloud of krills so thick that our DVL basically locked onto them and thought we were on the bottom. So our autos wouldn't work. Our auto altitude wouldn't work. It was so thick. We ended up turning off the lights on Herc and turning on all the lights on Argus to try and pull the cloud
Yeah.
up. It worked temporarily.
For about 60 seconds.
Yep. Just enough to move to the next spot, and then you get clouded out again.
I see. Because of those diurnal migrations, krill is particularly sensitive to light and is attracted to light.
Yeah, but I suspect when we do retrieve these the vehicles that there'll be some of these guys will hitchhike a ride up to the surface.
Oh yeah.
They get stuck in all the nooks and crannies, of which there are many.
Herc and Argus will be odiferous on deck.
Oh
Yes.
Yeah.
No difference.
Wowzers.
I want to share a really important conservation story about krill. This is such an important biomass for so many species on the West Coast. The Pacific Fisheries Management Council put a ban on harvesting krill across the entire West Coast because it is so important to so many fisheries and species across the board. And in some parts of the world, they harvest krill to